Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Wisdom Within. I am joined by the wonderful Melissa here, and she is an amazing astrocartography reader and author. And I'm so honored to have her here today on this episode because astrocartography is something that I'm so interested in, and I also think so many people don't know about it. So it's such an honor to have you here, and I'll just allow you to say hi, maybe go a little bit more into what you do. And yeah, just introduce
Yeah,
yourself.
thank you, Talia, for having me. And for anyone that's listening, yeah, we met here in Bali, and you just
Yes,
left, right? Not
yes,
too long
yes.
ago. Um, but yeah, we met at a beautiful open mic, and yeah, the work that I do actually guided me here to Bali. So I live on my moon line. So if anybody knows about moon energy, it's very grounding. It's home energy. And where I used to live is Pluto energy, so very transformative. But at the same time, like I didn't want to settle, and I
Mm,
always wondered why I didn't want to settle in New Jersey, back in the U.S. Like I bought a house, I barely wanted to put paint on the walls. Like I was like, what is going on?
mm,
Like I had this house for almost a decade, and I barely wanted to decorate. And then I come here to Bali, and it's like this cosmic home. So
mm,
for anyone that's listening that feels like they're lost, like they don't belong, that's what I work with. I work with the tool astrocartography, which is locational astrology, pretty much finding places in the world based on your astrology. So essentially, your astrological chart plotted on a world map, and it allows you to connect to places that you feel belonging, that you feel at home, you find love, connection, network, community, spirituality, and wealth and prosperity also opens up. So there's these different portals that you can open up through astrocartography. So I love it.
yes, amazing. And I think it would be great just to go into the different lines. Like, obviously, there's a lot, but maybe the main ones that for someone who doesn't know anything about astrology, doesn't know anything about astrocartography, can begin to understand what energies they're working with.
Exactly. Yeah, and what you'll feel is that different places around the world, they do trigger something in you, right? You've probably felt something in when you were in Bali versus being in the UK.
100%.
So that's the first thing. Like I usually ask, like, how do you feel where you live, where you've traveled, and do you have these different connections around the world through food, through people? That's the first thing, to start thinking about that and how you already intuitively connect to these energies without even knowing that you have, you know, Neptune energy or Saturn energy or Moon energy. Yeah, you start understanding these connections before you even dive into a session, because a
Hmm.
session is you start connecting with the archetypes of each planetary energy.
Yeah, and then what are the main lines that you think people should know about once they've started to connect with how they're feeling on different lands?
Yeah, my favorite is Jupiter. So if you know what Jupiter is about, it's about manifestation, about ease. If you have an idea, to manifest very easily, and it applies to love. It applies to career, also home life. So this is a great energy overall. And the next one would be Sun energy and Venus energy. So those are my favorites to work with at the
Mm.
beginning before diving into all the other ones that have very different facets, right? If you're looking for spirituality, for career, um, and also home and travel.
Mm. Yeah, so my sunline's in Bali and I felt amazing
Ah,
there.
yeah, so
And
you were
yeah,
illuminated. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
for
all about
sure.
illumination.
And everyone
Fame.
knows it. Like everyone was messaging me and like they were like, "You're gonna stay there, like you're just shining there so bright." And I went to look and I was like, "Okay, that makes sense." And I think
Yes.
what's interesting is that obviously there are lines that go through several places. So I wanted to ask, like,
Hmm.
how do you determine which place on that line, if it's like running through multiple places, how you can know? Is it just by looking at like the different lines that are going through, or like what other factors do you look for?
Yeah, so the way that I work with it, it's with astrocartography, it's based on goals. So if you're looking for love, career, spirituality, and also home and traveling, that's how I split it up. And then we start looking at the different energies that kind of fall under each of those. So for love in general would be Venus energy. So Venus is all about love, community and relationships, and um, and like I mentioned, Jupiter applies to all. So it could be love, it can be career, it can be home life, and then spirituality usually tends to be Pluto energy or Neptune, Chiron for healing, and home in general would be the moon energy, or the moon node, which is the lunar node, and that one's tapping into your purpose. So really, um, and you'll see that there's a lot of overlap. I have like a little diagram where you see a lot of overlap between those goals and the energies. But that's where it does get confusing. But the intersection it just means that there's a mixture of those energies. So if you have Venus and Moon energy, you have grounding as well as that love energy. So you have this combo, and some people don't have lines going through a particular place, and they're like, what is this, like a dead zone? And it's just neutral. It's not good, it's not bad. But going to places that have these energies can, provoke something or open something up. So it's not good or bad, even if you have a disharmonious line or harmonious. I always say that there's a lesson to be learned, anywhere that you go. So there is no bad place per se.
Yeah, and a lot of the time you're kind of like, I mean, everyone is kind of drawn to different places. Like, even if you don't get a reading, like,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of know, you feel for, oh, I've always randomly wanted to visit this place. And I think this allows you to really like connect with maybe why, and maybe will push you to
Exactly.
do it. But in reality, like,
Retrospectively.
but
Mm-hmm.
even knowing like how powerful lands are for activations is just such a thing that people don't know about, you
It
know?
is, and you're also working with the ley lines and the chakras of the earth, right? There's other energy centers that you're also working with, on top of the cosmic energy of the planetary energies. So there's so much, because Bali has its own energy. It either
Yeah.
wants you or it doesn't. So
I was
these.
nervous. I was nervous
Yeah.
about Bali because so many other spiritual lands I've traveled to, like it's been a lot. Like I've been traveling for a while
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, I feel like Bali's gonna go either way, and I was like, please be
Yeah.
nice to me. And it was. It was
Right.
oh, it was
Aw.
amazing. And I
Yeah.
think
It
now it's like,
opened its arm to you.
yeah, now I'm really trying to find that feeling of home. And
Mm.
yeah, I think it's really hard when you like grow up in a place and you've kind of like got a life here, like you've got your family, but like within you don't feel like it's home. And I'm sure you like get this a
Exactly.
lot, that like people feel like they should be living somewhere, but like things aren't aligning, or you just feel this inner knowing. And that's
Right.
something that I personally am really struggling with right now, because I have so much people here in support, and like, my
Mm.
parents, and they're like, please live with us, like da 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 da. And I'm like, I want to be able to, but there's something in me that's like, this place is not for me.
Exactly. And it's very interesting because I come from, I'm a child of immigrants, so my family came from, Guatemala, so Central
Hmm.
America. So I always felt disconnected to the U.S. Like there are no roots there for me.
Yeah, well, I'm the same.
My
Yeah.
Yeah. And where is your family originally from?
Well, my parents are from South Africa, so they moved to
Ah,
London
okay.
in their 20s. But then before that,
Mm.
um, like my family's from Eastern Europe. So it's like, yeah, even the idea of like we're all just like travelers, like we're all just citizens of
Right.
the earth. Because if you look
Like we're
back, it's like
nomads. Yeah.
we're all nomads, but I think there's so much like weird energy sometimes towards being a nomad, but I'm like, we're all nomads anyway. Like, we all have
Right.
moved around the earth.
Yeah. And for me specifically, I started this business during COVID. I started in 2020. And it was a weird time to start because nobody could travel, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm working with astrocartography, which is meant to help you figure out where to travel. But what I flipped the script and I was helping people connect with different parts of the world while they couldn't travel. So that
Mm.
is a special, like that's the special way that I work with astrocartography because I
Oh,
allow you
wow.
to see that you can stay wherever you are. Like you could be in the UK, but you can still connect to the energy of Bali. You can still
Yeah.
connect to the energy of India, right? By connecting to all of the different, maybe little trinkets that you picked up along the way,
I was just about to
or the
say,
food.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's all about the influences. Like they each carry an energy, and that's how you
Mm.
start to connect deeply to these places without even traveling, without even setting
Mm.
foot outside of your
Yeah,
home.
thank you for saying
So,
that. I think that's
yeah,
so important for people to know because, yeah, maybe it's not actually the time for you to travel there, but you can still access that energy. And like, I know that I made a point to buy loads of things from Bali for my room, which I've started to display
right.
around because it's like bringing that energy of my sunlight, bringing that energy of like the amount of activation and beauty I experienced there. And like, I can still bring that with me.
Exactly. And I also work with people that are refugees, immigrants, and that can't go back to their home countries or these places. Maybe they're war
Mm,
torn countries, right? And there, you have to find a way to connect to these places to unlock these portals. Um,
mm,
so so understanding your cosmic roadmap, which is my business, because you have this roadmap
mm,
that connects you to the cosmos. um, yeah, you can start making these connections from a distance, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to travel there. You
mm.
start making these connections through, yeah, through different things, through the senses, through all six senses.
Yeah, you spoke about this idea of like settling in Bali and like setting on your moon line. And I think, yeah, this idea of like settling for me has been something that I've been like kind of playing with because I think obviously we know like everything's impermanent and like home is
Mm,
within. And
it is,
equally,
yeah.
the energy of a land and community can make you feel so at home. And so, I speak to some people and they're like, well, home's a feeling you create in yourself. But then I'm like, no, I also feel like I want to create that on a land in a space. Like, what would
Mm.
you say about that?
Well, because I specifically came here for my home energy, and I definitely feel it here. But when I tell someone, oh, you have, home energy or moon energy in a particular place, you also have to figure out, is the environment for you? Because I work with
Mm.
Ayurveda as well. So understanding
Oh,
your
wow.
dosha, your body type. So each of the body types, you either are comfortable in a cool environment, a humid environment, or a dry environment. So that would be Pitta, Kapha, and Vata, right? So
Mm.
those different body types also play into where you're meant to live. So it's not all about, the line. Like you may have the best line going through Iceland, but maybe the person that you're meant to meet from Iceland is in Bali, right? Like the environment that you're meant to live in. So
Mm.
just keeping your mind open to how you're meant to connect to these energies, because home may be in a person, it may be
Mm.
in the type of food that you eat, it may be the clothes that you wear. So
Mm.
making those connections, yeah, but
Yeah, that is
it
very
doesn't
true.
necessarily have to be, yeah, with the place itself. um but Bali was interesting because I always was drawn to Southeast Asia, and I had always gone to Malaysia. So I'm married. My husband's back in the U.S. and yeah, I always came to Malaysia for trips for like almost 20 years. So I was drawn to Southeast Asia, the culture, the language, because Bahasa Melayu is very similar to Bahasa Indonesia. And I think that similarity also brought me to Bali. So it was an easy transition to be here. Because before I came to Bali, it didn't feel like home because I was misaligned. I wasn't in alignment with my purpose. I was still
Mm,
working as an engineer, and I was just like, I wouldn't see myself here, right? Like I wasn't like the usual, like, oh my gosh, Bali's amazing. I didn't want to stay here.
mm,
And it wasn't until almost 4 years later that, yeah, I decided I'm going to Bali because of my moonline that's there. Like, I know that that's going to open up something. And I trusted in the astrocartography line. Um, yeah, so I did surrender to the line that I had here, the moon energy, and it opened me up to getting my visa within 3 weeks. So yeah, I had a 1 month visa that opened up to 2 months, but I kept telling people, yeah, I'm here for 1 month, 2 months, maybe 2 years, and within the 3 weeks that I was here, the opportunity to stay for 2 years opened up, which was really
wow.
crazy. That doesn't happen. A month after that, I was still struggling with somebody that I was attached to back in Spain because I went to Spain for a month and a half before I came to Bali. So um, from New Jersey, I went to Spain for a month and a half, and then I came to Bali. That was my journey to Bali, and yeah, I let that person go, and I have an open marriage, so I was exploring my sexuality. So all these things. So I went to a Nusa Penida trip, and I was like, all right, I'm letting go of this person like in style, right? Like I'm just yeah, I'm going for myself. And when I came back, I downloaded Tinder, and this was a month from the moment that I signed for this business to get my visa. I matched with my partner, who I'm still with. It's been almost 2 years. And the crazy thing about her, she's Indonesian, and my love line actually goes through Jakarta. So that's what I'm saying. Like you usually end up meeting somebody from a beneficial line, like a love line, something. And I happened to meet her here on my home line. So
Wow.
um, yeah, it's just really crazy that her name is also of the. It means of the stars. Like her name is starts with S3. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Amazing. Well, I think the thing you said about it was when you were living in alignment and ready for it that it came.
Hmm.
Because I think things won't align for you until you are aligned in yourself. And that's such an important point
Exactly.
to make.
Yeah, because I was still stuck in my career. Like I couldn't open up to the beauty of Bali at that moment, right? Like
Mm,
now, I go to a cafe and I'm open to like a writing workshop. Where back then it's like, why am I doing a writing workshop? Like, what's the point of this, right?
mm,
So all these opportunities to tap into my creativity um, are because I'm in alignment now, and now I understand why I'm here, where I couldn't see
yeah,
that before. Hmm.
exactly. Like when you're ready for it, it will come, and then you'll be ready
Hmm.
to fully absorb what you're there for and what you're there to do. And yeah, even with
Yeah.
the visa example, like I know something that comes up for me is like I don't have a visa for anywhere because I'm a UK citizen. So like I
Hmm.
can't just move to the US or Europe even now or anywhere. And so I'm like, oh my God, like how am I gonna move anywhere? But then I'm like, when it's meant to happen, it will
Right.
just work out. If you're meant to be somewhere, like it will align,
Hmm.
you know?
It will. So,
Yeah, and that's how I felt about Bali. I like had the best time. I was there for like just over 3 months, and I was like, I know that if I was meant to stay here, something would have happened to like
hmm.
keep me there, you know?
Yeah. There's a story. One of the girls that I met in one of the meetups I went to. I think she was in Colombia at the time. But she won a yoga a yoga training in Bali. But she's
Mm,
like, wait. but how do I get from Colombia to Bali? Like, how do I pay for my trip there? And she does astrology, and she tapped into her community, and they were like, well, we'll do sessions with you. And by doing sessions with her, that opened her up to getting the money that she needed for the plane ticket, right? So once you set the intention, the path will open up. So
Yeah.
that is also a big thing that I work with, intention, because I set the intention almost a decade ago, 3 years into working as an engineer. I said I'm gonna retire. I'm gonna retire before
Mm,
I hit 40, and
mm,
that's what I did at 39. I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with engineering, and it was an easy decision. Like, everybody was like, "Are you sick? Is there are you, something wrong?" I'm like, "No, this is what I set in motion a decade ago. Oh, this is this was my destiny, right? This is what I had
wow.
already decided." Yeah.
Yeah, that's how powerful we are. Like, we literally, like, you just have to release, like, exactly the steps that are gonna take you there. But just like
Mm,
when you declare that intention, like right now, I've declared, like, yeah, I want that home feeling now because I've been
yeah.
doing all this activation, all this traveling, and I'm like, that's what I want to create, whether it's in a person, whether it's in a space. And yeah, I don't know where it's gonna be. I don't know how it's gonna happen, but I'm like, I know that's the power that we all have when we
Mm-hmm.
set an intention firmly.
Exactly. Yeah. And I don't know if I'll be here long term. My partner's Indonesian, so I do see myself here long term, but I'm also open to where her lines are beneficial, right? And
Mm.
that's something that I work with also, like couples, making
Mm.
sure that their lines are beneficial. Because she has Pluto energy here, which is very similar to what I used to live on. So she's been going through a lot of transformation herself, which has been
Mm.
good for her business. Um, and getting to the point of alignment and meeting me, because going back to like her past relationships, I can see where that misalignment was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now it's opening up to, yeah, traveling outside and doing retreats, starting here in Bali, but then expanding out to Vietnam, to the rest of Southeast Asia, like possibly Africa, Morocco, to Europe. So that's all very possible. Um, yeah, so I've set the intention of creating these like travel experiences where you unlock these portals, because each person has a different energy around the world. So if you're
Mm.
on these experiences with other people, then you realize like, oh wow, you're meant to connect with love here, or you're meant to connect with your energy of manifestation, right? Through Jupiter. So there's going to be these beautiful experiences that I'm already seeing, and co-creating with my partners and other amazing facilitators.
Wonderful. Yeah, so now I want to switch gears a bit, speak about your books, because
Mm-hmm.
you're a three-time best-selling author, which is
Yes.
amazing. And I looked a little bit at your books, but I would love to hear more about your journey becoming an author.
Yeah, so I've always written, like I always wrote poetry. Always been like a journaler, so always journaling something. And that process was intense because I'm featured. I have 3 featured chapters in these books. So it's a She Speaks series, and there are about 20 to 25 authors in each of the books. And the first chapter starts with my journey into astrocartography, and then it continues evolving. The second chapter had to do with the connections, the deep connections that we have, with with these cosmic connections that we make. And then the
Mm.
third one, I dove into a bit of fiction. So it was a little fiction story that did throw in a bit of astrocartography in there. And it was a queer storyline also, which I wanted because I didn't see that very often.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, so it allowed me to play around with my writing style, where it was mostly autobiographical for the first two, and then it was fiction for the last one. But I grew out of that because I started with an idea where I'm like, oh, I'm gonna write about this, and then by the end, it was completely like not what I had originally intended. So, as an author, you just also have to surrender to the process because it's you're transforming in that process because you can set the intention, but it's going to be whatever wants to flow, whatever wants to come through, right? So yeah, it was a deep transformative container because I was in it with 20 to 25 other women in each of the books, so we were also going through like this fear of being seen also, where we were scared. Some of us, we waited until the last minute to finalize our chapters because we were so terrified that somebody was going to read our chapters, right? That we were sharing these secrets that nobody had ever known about. So yeah, I dive in a lot with my sexual journey, like exploring my sexuality. And that was something that I didn't really talk to a lot of people about, but I really wanted to dive into it in the chapters because whoever was reading it, I wanted them to understand that my identity journey can also resonate with them, right? Regardless if it's related to sexuality or if it's related to, where they're from or where their parents are from. Because in the end, we all just want to belong. So and that's what I bring with my work. I want everybody to feel belonging, regardless of where they are, what their labels are, where they come from.
That's such a beautiful intention, I think. Yeah, wherever you are right now, whether you're in a job you don't like or you don't feel like you're living out your purpose, I think it's so powerful to know and be inspired by someone like you who's like been on that journey. And I think I would love for you on this podcast to share a bit about what advice you give to people who feel really lost in not belonging.
I think for me, at my lowest point, I stepped into a yoga studio. And I know that seems like very cliche, but it's connecting to community, however that is for you. For me, I loved yoga. I had done it at home, but I had never been to a yoga studio. And it wasn't until I went to the yoga studio that I realized it was more than just yoga. It was the community, the sisterhood that I was entering into, because I was very in my masculine at that point, right? I had been working as an engineer for almost a decade, all guys, and like I never wore a dress. Like now in Bali, I'm like always in flowy dresses, and like I'm really in my feminine here. And when I stepped into that yoga studio, that's when I started going to sister circles and started learning about Reiki. And that is when astrocartography opened up to me, because right after one of the classes, one of the girls was like, "Hey, do you know that you can figure out where to be in the world with astrology?" I'm like, "What?" And that's where my world opened up, because I had those, I had multiple tabs open with all the places I had been to, and then I started realizing, like, wow, that's why I've connected with this person. That's why that happened in that place. In the 25 countries that I had been to. So yeah, my suggestion to someone that's really lost is to find a community, whatever it is. It might be rock climbing, it might be yoga, it might be singing, but just finding community that opens you up. And for me, it was really connecting with entrepreneurs that was the game changer for me. Because in that yoga studio, I saw so many women that had left corporate and became yoga instructors, and then they were doing their coaching programs. Like I just signed up with one of my oldest mentors, actually my very first mentor, and it's been almost 5 years that I know her. I just signed up for a program that she's doing now because she started with a very simple coaching program, and now she's doing like PR and like media, like a whole year program. So you just never know who you're gonna meet, because they could be lifelong friends, and opening you up to what you're just changing the trajectory of your life, because that just stepping into that yoga studio completely changed. Yeah, one of the instructors was like, "Hey, there's a girl that's been living in Bali, and I met her there during a sister circle, and she was the one that inspired me to finally come to Bali." So I started setting the intention, like, okay, how do I make my way? How do I start? I was doing my MBA at the time, and I was doing some projects related to Southeast Asia, and instead of doing very like logical engineer work, I was working with batik, like the textiles, right? The traditional textiles. How do I make that sustainable? And I ended up getting a prize for that. It was not technical in any way, but because I dove into it, started working with a fashion designer that I knew in Malaysia, it it just opened me up to being seen in a different way. Wow. And not in the typical light of this boring engineer.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. There's so much that came out of, as you said, just stepping into that yoga studio. And I find that here there's not as much community events that are accessible like in Bali. I mean, in Bali, it's like you can't not be in community. It's like you step outside, you go to a place, and you're just talking to people. Whereas I think in big cities, especially, it's a lot more. Everyone is so in their masculine that they don't even give themselves that. And actually, one of my intentions is to start creating that here. I'm actually hosting a sister event on September 8th, and I think because I'm craving that here, and I'm like, okay, well, let me just start it, because they do have it in other parts of London, but London's such a big city, and like, to commute anywhere is like over an hour long, and it's like, in people with busy lives, they don't want to like have to travel so far for that,
Right.
So,
and even to go to a yoga studio is very hard, and it's probably very transactional, where it's like you go for the class and you're not really
exactly. It's like everyone's in and out.
Right.
Yoga's become all about fitness here, which is why the training I did was all about like demystifying yoga and tantra. And
so I lived out in the country. That's why it was. So you would stay like a little longer. Like it wasn't like you would go for a class and then just head out.
Yeah, but obviously, like the power of human connection and community, nothing can like change that aspect of things. I think it's just opening people up to that. And I think that's why I'm brought back to this land, is to like really look at the contrasts and look at how many different ways people are living. And how much room there is and how much possibility there is for people.
Yeah. And I love that you're creating those spaces for yourself, because that's important. And my first mentor, that's what she was doing. She was creating these spaces to do Kundalini in the mornings, and I loved it. And people just they gravitated towards it because it was during COVID, so it was a perfect the perfect time to seek connection online. But through her, I saw how she was creating these communities, even if we couldn't meet in person, and just building these spaces where we could interact and exchange different ideas outside of typical work conversation that goes nowhere. That's very superficial.
Yeah, I think people now more than ever are just craving that like depth of connection. That's why podcasting and like all these things and social media where people are showing their lives is taking off, because it's like people want to feel a connection.
Right. Yeah, and those sister circles for me, they were like, I wasn't doing therapy at the time, but they were therapy for me. Like those 2 years, I would show up and, share my story, and I would be just bawling my eyes out,
Mm, yeah.
because I didn't
Yeah.
have any spaces, right? To, with my partner or with friends, like they
Mm,
couldn't hold that space for me.
exactly. And
Um,
yeah, and I think the thing is, like, especially here, everyone's first reaction is to go for therapy. And I'm
mhm,
not discounting the power of that, but I'm saying that, like, it's a different energy when you go to sister circles and when you do work that's spiritual. It's like a different
right.
layer, it's a different depth, it's a different way of holding yourself
Yeah.
and being held. And I think people are still very not aware of the power of these things. And yeah, there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, and opening the space, because there's so many people that don't know how to use their voice or are scared to use their voice. Especially me, like I'm someone that has always worked with my throat chakra. And I've had difficulty speaking in public, um, and it was even difficult for me. I have a podcast, but it was difficult for me to start one. It wasn't
Mm,
because I love to be, on the microphone. It was because I wanted to share other people's stories. And the mentor that I keep bringing up, I would see her in these spaces, and it wasn't about her. That's when I learned, like, these sister circles were all about who was showing up, right, and giving each person an opportunity to speak and to share. So that was really valuable, because I had always struggled to speak up.
mm,
So those spaces are really, really healing. Um,
mm.
and yeah, I'm so grateful that I found that early on
Yeah.
in my spiritual journey. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think so many people struggle with that. They struggle with public
Mhm.
speaking, they struggle with speaking their truth. And one thing I was picking up on is, yeah, this idea of the feminine and how, your process into getting to Bali or doing astrocartography, a lot of it was about just like surrendering and letting go. And I think that's another thing that is a feminine thing that people like we're so used to planning. The idea of it is like, what? And I've been on
or
that
they
journey.
or they go berserk, right? They're like, oh my gosh, it didn't go as planned. Like now, like what? They're so focused on the plan, and they failed, right? They didn't do it as the plan. But
Yeah.
I just went as with the flow. Exactly. It was just surrendering, and seeing, at every turn, like, do I have to pivot? But yeah, going with that river. Yeah.
And what was that journey to get to that place where you could do that for you? Because it sounds like before you
Mm.
were more masculine.
Well, I'm a Pisces, so I think I'm already like,
Oh, okay, that makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, I'm okay with that type of journey. I know that there's other people that they need to know what's up ahead. So for me, it was okay. Um, but yeah, I don't know for you, if do you like go with the flow as well, or do you do anything?
So for me, it was like a big journey to get to this place to be able to do that because it was so foreign to me before and it goes against everything that I'd been brought up to learn. Um, but I think now, after traveling for almost 2 years, I am wanting to integrate and be more balanced because I
Mm,
think what happens is when you've never lived like that, you then switch to the other side to be able to do that. But
yeah,
then, we are both masculine and feminine. So now this part of my life is about, okay, how can I still live in a state of flow and surrender? Because ultimately that's is a is the way to live because everything's uncertain and changing, but
yeah.
also like
You
creating structure as well.
you bring up a really good point about that grounding, because I didn't find that grounding until a few months ago. So being a nomad can be very unsettling.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I know a lot of, digital nomads that say the same, that they want to find their home, right? Because they're bouncing around from one place to the other, and their nervous system just
Mm,
is going haywire. So I've been here 2 years, right? I'm about to renew my visa, but I just found this apartment where before, I have a 1 year lease, but before I was in this homestay that I wasn't happy with, and before that I was bouncing around different places
Mm-hmm.
month to month. So my body just didn't feel right, and my I couldn't focus on my business. I couldn't focus on making connections. I didn't know where I was, going the next month.
Mm.
So my body felt it. Like I was
Yes.
just like, okay, I don't feel
Yes.
safe. I don't know what I'm doing.
Mm.
And now I finally feel settled where I'm like, okay, I want to start investing in myself. I want to start going out to meet people.
It's about being real with yourself and honest. And I
Mhm.
think from the outside, the digital nomad life can look really glamorous, and a lot of people are envious and think that you're just living a holiday lifestyle. But actually, it is very unsettling for your nervous system, like
Yeah.
not knowing where you're going to sleep that night.
Yeah.
How am I going to move my
Because
stuff around? How am I going to do this? Like, there's so many almost survival things in place. And
right.
I think now I realize, like, when I got to Bali, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get a house. And even if I want to travel
Mm,
around Bali, I'm not going to move all my stuff every time I travel and not know where I'm staying next, because then I can't be present and enjoy it,
right. Because you
And
still have your
it's,
stuff in your
yeah.
in your bags, and
And I'm
like
like, I
we're
don't want to
yeah
buy
it's
anything because then I won't be able to fit it and
hmm
close my bag. And it's just a whole thing. So
right.
once I set that intention, I called in the villa that you came to for open mic, and it was
Yeah.
amazing. It was better than I could have ever imagined. And now I'm like, okay, like I know that that's what I need. Like I need some grounding and stability in order to rise in any way. And like it's like a tree, like it needs the roots and to be able to grow. And I think just having that understanding that that's how I travel best, and like staying for longer periods of time creating a home for myself is really important.
Slow travel. Yeah, like
Yeah.
slow intentional travel. Yeah, where someone that's vacationing, they spend a week, right, or maybe a few days in Ubud, and they go off to their home. So they have a home, but it's okay, for that short amount of time to bounce around. But when you're doing it for an unknown amount of time, right? You don't know if it's going to be 1 month like me, or if it was going to be 2 months, and then it ended up being 2 years. So that opens up a lot of possibility. And I always gravitated to a year lease, because in my body, like I needed that certainty, that
That's
I
what
had a
I'm
place to
feeling.
stay
Yeah.
for a full year. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so for me, it's just figuring out now, like the where of that. And I've looked at where my
Mm-hmm.
lines are. And also, I'm like, we'll just see when the right time to go check those places out is. Because again, it's like, I could just fly to these places, but it also has to feel like the right time as well. So, what would you say to
Mm-hmm.
that when you like someone's looking? So, say I'm like coming to you and I'm like, I want a home, I want a lover, and you can see where those are. Do you say to that person, like, surrender and get a plane ticket and see? Like what type of, I mean, obviously it's probably specific to each person, but do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I usually say to start building community outside. So there's so many meetups, right? Like online within these places. So starting to join these online meetups where you can start making connections there. Um, Open up Tinder, or like set your location and start seeing who's around in those places. That's something that you can do. Um, and just tuning into the energy of that place, meditating, just calling in that energy.
Mm,
And yeah, the next step would be, you prepare yourself energetically in your body, and then finally making your way there.
mm. Yeah, I
Um,
do that. I mean, I really like visualize where I want to be, like
mhm.
near a beach, in the sun, like what type of, how I want to feel around the people and the community, and like what pace of life. And I really just like feel that. even though I'm not in
Yes.
it right now. I'm like, how can I just like create that right now through my mind and the
Yes.
power I
And
have
that's
to
what I usually
visualize.
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
my Reiki meditations that I would like close up my astrocartography sessions with would be that. I'm pretty much asking you, like, what do you see? Like, who are you
Yeah.
talking to? What conversations are you having? Like, what are you wearing? What do you
Mm,
hear in the distance? Are you in a cafe? Are you in the jungle? Are you by the
beautiful.
sea? Like, do you feel the mist on your face?
Mm,
So all these things, like working with the senses
yeah.
and feeling into what feels right for your body,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's once you feel the goosebumps and you're like, okay, this
Mm,
feels electric, electrifying, like, all
yeah.
right, this is where I have to be. And that's the beauty of astrocartography, where you're like, all right, I'll set the intention. What do I have in that place? And you know that you're either looking for love in that place, or it's going to
Mm,
be home. Like, what is it going to unlock? So
yeah.
that's the beauty of it. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. I feel like we shared so much information about astrocartography and yeah, just learning to live in your purpose in different ways and connecting with the energy and opening up yourself to taking steps to live a life that's more in alignment for you. So this podcast is called Wisdom Within. So I always ask at the end if you have any last bits of wisdom in this episode that you want to share for people that you feel like people need to hear right now with what's going on in the world cosmically, or anything that's just wanting to come through your intuition and your wisdom.
I think recently with this Lionsgate, it was a really powerful one, and I don't know if you felt it. But all of August, I felt like there was an up leveling for me, to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't know how to handle this. Um, Oftentimes, we're not unlocking the true abundance that we're meant for, because we're getting in our way. We're scared of showing up, of doing the workshops, um, of doing all the things that are gonna just make you expand. So I'm in that space of starting to share my work. I took almost like a two-year break. Like, this is one of my first podcast episodes in a little while,
Ooh.
since, yeah. So so I'm feeling that energy of sharing my wisdom, but not to be so hard on yourself, because
Mm,
these 2 years, I'm like, I haven't been doing much for my business. I haven't been promoting as much as I wanted to, but it was because I was going through such a deep transition, right? And giving yourself grace, for those moments, because I was living through my astronomics. Like, I was taking it all in, and now I'm finally ready to share that wisdom, right? So so understanding, like, when you need to, like, deeply rest, it's okay. You don't need
mm,
to always be, on the hamster wheel, um, doing the work, because you do need to live it out and experience it for yourself. And the abundance, that's going to all open up to you once you step out of the way.
thank you for saying that. I can relate to all of that. I think, yeah, people see taking time out as unproductive, but sometimes, like, or actually a lot of the time, listening to your body and listening to that what you need, and like being gentle and
Yeah,
soft with yourself is gonna
yeah. Like, I
amplify
knew,
you.
yeah. Like, I knew, stepping into this podcast, I needed to take a nap before this.
Mm,
And that's what I gave myself. Like, I knew I needed to rest, rather than, what am I going to talk about? Start planning, because
mm.
these podcast episodes are going to go how they're going to go.
Well, exactly. I get so
And
many people before being like, "Oh, like
uh-huh,
what questions are you gonna ask me?" Like da da da, and I'm like, I just really like I'm in the moment and I flow and I listen
uh-huh,
and I'm like, yeah, I do take a little bit of notes just to like track if there's something that comes up and comes through.
yeah,
But again, it's like I don't want the person to plan because I want it to
Mm-hmm.
be organic, and whatever needs to come through, I trust it will. And I think
Exactly.
a lot of people are like, how are you at that place? Like, so many people are in their planning, and I'm like, that is our power. That is the feminine, of just like being with your intuition and allowing things to flow. And like, it's a very hard thing for a lot of people to get to. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, sharing your light with the world, and also for having the courage to go on that journey to discover your truth and help other people do that. And yeah, this idea of belonging is so powerful. I think so many people feel lost, and I think it'll be amazing for people to work with you. So yeah, how do people work with you? What are your current offerings? And yeah, share more about that.
Yeah, you can find me at Cosmic Roadmap on Instagram. My website is also cosmicroadmap.com.
Hmm.
And my offerings, I do short one-on-one cosmic chats, like 30-minute cosmic chats. If you just want to do a quick, very unstructured session, or you can go even deeper into my like signature astrogeo sessions that combine Reiki, tarot. So those are more in depth. And then I also do couple sessions. And those can be for a romantic partner. It could be for a travel partner. Also, I've had mothers that want to see if their child should move to a different place. So I've done I've done these sessions with families because it's really important that everybody is in a harmonious place, right? Because different things will come up. I've even had people that are about to break up, or they're looking into divorce because they're thinking maybe the energies that we have here could be affecting us. So that's the deep work that I do, even with partnerships. And then I do also offer mentorship. So I do a one-on-one mentorship for 4 weeks. So if you do want to dive even deeper into all of these planetary energies, the one session isn't enough for you. You could do that over the course of a month. So that's what I offer.
Amazing.
And
Oh,
then
wow.
the travel experiences will be coming, retreats. So that's all coming in the future.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Okay, well, yeah, get in touch with Melissa and get curious about your astrocartography, and I hope you get all the activations you want on this earth. Thank
Yes.
you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Talia.
Lots of love.